Now, in our Faith in America segment, Sunday evening at sundown, the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah begins. Hanukkah, or the Festival of Lights. To discuss the significance and the lessons of Hanukkah, we welcome back to the program Rabbi Michael Shevack from the Alliance for Enlightened Judaism. He is also the author of several books, including The Six Fix, Spiritual Healthcare for a Stronger America. Rabbi Shevack, thank you so much for coming back to us. Good to see you. Now, Rabbi, when I talk to rabbis about Hanukkah, they'll often say, some publicly, some not, that it's not really a major holiday. And it kind of gained prominence when Christmas gift-giving really kind of took off. But from a biblical and a historical perspective, it is a very important moment. Talk to us about why.
Well, curiously, Hanukkah is not even in the Hebrew Bible. You can't, the first and second Maccabees are not in our scripture. And it's a wonderful thing that we really need people who follow other scriptures in order to complete our story. But it is a historical event that is absolutely critical. Without the events around Hanukkah, you would have no Judaism, you would have no Christianity, you would have no Islam, and the entire world culture that we have would be completely changed, because the God of creation and the Redeemer of all humankind would have been wiped off the face of the earth. It was a pivotal moment.
Yeah, and talk to us a little bit about that. What was going on from a historical perspective and even a cultural or religious perspective at the time?
Very instructive for what we're happening in the United States of America right now. There's a cultural divide, an extreme cultural divide. Part of the population was interested in Hellenism. They were dressing up in togas. They were reading philosophy. They were going to the gymnasium. And the others were more traditionalist. And what was happening is they actually began to expect that it wouldn't be long before Israel would be a Greek city-state. It would be part of Hellenism, and it would lose its own identity. And then a dramatic event took place. In 164 BCE, you had the invasion of Antiochus Epiphanes, who was the commander of the Greek-Syrian army, and he invaded Jerusalem. He ransacked the temple. Yeah. He destroyed the altar to the one God of creation and history. He replaced him with an altar to Zeus and sacrificed pig blood, and that was it. Any fads that people were involved with in the Greek culture, they were gone. This was the identity of Israel was pushed to its extreme, and a rebellion took place, a guerrilla war, in fact.
Yeah, there's a lesson beyond just for Jews in this holiday. What can we all take away from the Festival of Lights and from that history, that moment in history where the Jewish people really were kind of forced to make a choice and they chose God?
Yeah, the fact is we are always having new cultures and new cultural innovations, new philosophies, new scientific perspectives, and this is always entering into the mix of who everyone becomes in every country they are. But there are sacred boundaries that are like the lights in the Great Temple. You lose those sacred boundaries, you lose the identity of who you are as a nation. Now, that doesn't mean it's just about Israel. It's that any nation who has a sacred identity and has a sense of self has to be careful to guard this essence of who they are. Otherwise, they can get lost in the drama of a history that doesn't endure. The miracle of the Jewish people is that we actually are the only people that have endured from that Mesopotamian area as a continual unbroken lineage, as testimony to the one God.
You know, to your point about sort of this cultural clash and these forces competing with each other here in the United States, you know, earlier this week, President Biden signed into law what they call the Respect for Marriage Act, enshrining same-sex marriage into federal law. During the ceremony, Biden made a number of very controversial comments. Here's a sample.
Racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, they're all connected. But the antidote to hate is love. This law and the love it defends strike a blow against hate in all its forms. And that's why this law matters to every single American, no matter who you are or who you love.
Rabbi, he, among other things, suggested that people who oppose transgender transition surgeries for kids or believe in traditional marriage, for instance, are espousing the same kind of hate as anti-Semitism. What is your reaction to that kind of rhetoric from the president?
I think in general, and it's not just President Biden's statement, it's in general, the language and the choice of language on how people communicate in the United States of America needs a little refinement. We have a little problem with the word anti-Semite. It's not the same word. It's building power. There's a white supremacist. There is a neo-Nazi resurgence around the word anti-Semite. So if you take someone whose faith requires them to only endorse the traditional marriage, and you're saying that they are anti-Semites, you are linking them with Nazis. And you're saying, well, what they really want to do is exterminate any sexual or gender diverse people. We have to be very careful. Words change, especially in today's media. And also, it is kind of humorous, Tom. The vast majority of the traditional Jewish, religion agrees with the traditional view of marriage.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So what are you saying? Because you're Jewish, you're anti-Semite? We have to be, very careful with language.
Yeah, I think you talk about that in your book very eloquently. And Rabbi Mike Shevack, we're going to have to leave it there, but I wish you and your family a very happy Hanukkah, and thank you so much for being with us.
I'm lighting a candle for you, Tom.
Thank you. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
No crooked establishment.
None of that
Twisting the truth.
No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax.
Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think.
They let
Me decide.
Newsmax.
Real news
For real people.